Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Rotten Tomatoes is Wrong. And I'm alongside my second favorite comedian, Mr. Mark Ellis.
Okay.
But only for this time frame. I'm putting your pal Zelensky as my favorite comedian since the leader of Ukraine was a former comedian. That's all I will say. He's just my favorite comedian at this time.
Used to see him at the open mics. We'd fist bump. Good times all around. But much support to the people of Ukraine. I mean, this is why we do this show, Jacqueline, or at least this is why you do this show, is because I know where your heart really is, and it lies in award season. And now we finally have the show that you didn't have to prepare for at all, that I had to scramble around and watch 6 movies in the last 2 days to gear up for, and that would be, it's our Oscars show. Yeah. It's our Oscars, particularly Best Picture. We're talking about all the Best Pictures, what should win, what shouldn't even be nominated, where the Tomatometer are. Rotten Tomatoes got some of these wrong, in my humble opinion, so this is going to be a fun episode. And then you and our esteemed guest get to correct me when I overstep my bounds, stumping for Godzilla versus Kong.
Yes, we're going to run down all the scores, but before that, we obviously have to introduce our guest for this episode. He is a friend of mine, Kyle Buchanan, the pop culture reporter for the New York Times and the writer of the Projectionist column. He has a new book out that we are going to talk in depth with him about. But before we get to that, let's go ahead and find out what folks are saying about our 10 Best Picture nominees in 2 Minutes with Tim.
2 Minutes with Tim.
All right, so here are the scores for all the Best Picture winners in alphabetical order. And just a reminder, these are not based on adjusted scores. These are strictly what we have right now. Belfast is certified fresh at 87% on the Tomatometer with 293 reviews. Coda is certified fresh at 96% on the Tomatometer with 256 reviews. Don't Look Up is rotten at 56% with 281 reviews. Incidentally, Don't Look Up is the worst reviewed Best Picture nominee since Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close from 2012, which was rotten at 45%. Drive My Car is certified fresh at 98% with 163 reviews. Dune is certified fresh at 83% with 465 reviews. King Richard is certified fresh at 90% with 268 reviews. Licorice Pizza is certified fresh at 91% with 273 reviews. Nightmare Alley is certified fresh at 79% with 313 reviews. The Power of the Dog is certified fresh at 93% with 321 reviews. And finally, last but not least, West Side Story is certified fresh at 93% with 348 reviews. Last year's Best Picture winner, Nomadland, is certified fresh at 93% with 421 reviews. And the best reviewed Best Picture of all time is It Happened One Night, which is certified fresh at 99% with 103 reviews. We covered that one on a previous podcast. So those are your nominees. I'm hearing the Wrap It Up music right now, so I just want to thank Lucy and Jacqueline and Mark for everything. I couldn't have done it without you, and thank you so much. Back to you, folks.
And It Happened One Night reference. Oh, we were so young when that movie came out, Jacqueline.
Yes, honestly, that Best Picture chat that we did with Eric Cohn was incredible, but I have to say I do think our chat with Kyle is going to top that. So let's go ahead and cue that up now in our Movie Talk section. All right, everyone, please welcome now to the Rotten Tomatoes podcast, Mr. Kyle Buchanan, the pop culture reporter for the New York Times and writer of the Projectionist column. He has a new book out, Blood, Sweat, and Chrome, The Wild and True Ride of Mad Max Fury Road. Ooh. And he also happens to be a man with an impeccable suit game. I have seen it, ladies and gentlemen. You do not even know. Kyle, sir, how you doing?
I'm good. Listen, I'm a Southern California guy. I wear t-shirt and shorts almost all the time. But when required to step it up and wear a suit, which, is part of my job going to these award shows, I will wear a suit. I will turn it out, and they will be cool suits.
Yeah, see, that's all I'm saying, Jacqueline. I mean, look, is that people look at me probably the same way some might look at Kyle, and they're like, oh, well, look at how relaxed and chill that guy is. What we're doing is we're conserving our energy for the next time that we have to suit up. So we're not like, that's why I couldn't be like the president of the United States, for example, that and many other reasons. But like, I can't do a suit every day, but I could pull it off like once a month.
Mark, though, before we get into our discussion today, because we're both, Kyle and I live in the award space. When I'm not on this podcast, trust, ladies and gentlemen, that is what Mistress has sort of kidnapped me. we need to break down our 10 Best Picture nominees and sort of rank them. And you have our framework for this, correct?
Yes, I do. I have the ranking formula, and I am ready to go with it. So I'm going to give you the ranking formula order, so starting at the top, and then I'm also going to give you all the Tomatometer, because that is how prepared I am, thanks to the notes put together by producer Lucy, without which I would be lost. So here we go, in order of our ranking formula, Rotten Tomatoes, and that kind of factors in like how many reviews there are for a particular film, that sort of stuff. So here we go with The Power of the Dog. Shout out to Molly the Wonder Dog. 93% certified fresh, followed by Coda, which is 95% certified fresh. West Side Story coming into the 3 spot, 92% certified fresh. They're all certified fresh at this point. Drive My Car is number 4 at 98%. Licorice Pizza, somehow it's better than Dune. I don't get it. 91%. Dune is right behind Licorice Pizza, 83% on the Tomatometer. King Richard gets us back into the A territory with 90%. Number 8 is Belfast, 87%. Nightmare Alley is 79%. And bringing up the rear is a movie that it really is encouraging its cast to not do what it's doing to all these other award-contending movies. Don't Look Up. And that is 56%, the only rotten film, according to the Tomatometer, nominated for Best Picture. So there you go.
Ranking score, I will say, for anyone that's sort of like curious about why we do that, the reason being is a film like Drive My Car, which is 98% certified fresh, and I think numerically the highest ranked Best Picture, actually got a fraction of the reviews of a film like Power of the Dog, who had over 300 reviews because it was a very widely reviewed film, at 93. So the idea to be, we want to reward the most populous films that were judged by the largest version of the critical community. Because then you'd have a bunch of films that just had 5 reviews and positive reviews be at the top of all of our lists. And I don't think that's fair. Drive My Car is incredible, but I don't think you can compare how many critics commented on that to Power of the Dog. I'm curious, Kyle, what you think of this whole thing.
Well, although in some ways, Drive My Car is the critic success story of award season. I mean, It's really crazy. I'm thinking about how Drive My Car was nominated for all the categories that Parasite won. But Parasite, for as unlikely as that was a Best Picture winner, had also won the Palme d'Or at Cannes. It kind of was anointed as soon as it debuted. That wasn't the case with Drive My Car. I mean, I was at that Cannes Film Festival. Drive My Car didn't win first place, second place, or third place.
You got a screenwriting award.
It got a screenplay award. Hey, not so bad. But still, people did not leave that festival thinking this is going to be the Oscar movie. And it only became that because those critics groups, the New York Film Critics, the Los Angeles Film Critics, and the National Society of Film Critics, all really threw their muscle behind it and said this is the best film of the year.
They really did. And I actually saw him the other night, so I'm going to go ahead and shout him out on this, although he'll never listen to it. Justin Chang, who is a member of, I believe, 2 of those organizations.
Right, LA and National Society.
Yeah, and I'm ranking one. I put his foot right on the pedal of any gas that film gets. I think Janus Films should take the man out to a 5-star dinner because he wrote so eloquently on the films. But I also think internally in his organizations help champion its worthiness to other folks. So
the Academy is becoming more international. We're seeing more films not in the English language make the Best Picture race. But it's really impressive that this movie made it over, honestly, a lot of Academy darlings like Almodovar's Parallel Mothers, Asghar Farhadi's A Hero, Paolo Sorrentino's The Hand of God. These are all people who have been recognized by Oscar before. These are their favorites. These are people that the Academy knows, and they still went for Hamaguchi. That really shows you the power of critics.
Absolutely.
I'm like Mark, a pig in mud. This just so, like, I love.
I was about to ask you, Mark, what about you? What do you think about this list? I know you just literally got like, it's like sometimes when I listen to Mark and other comedians talk about comedy or football, like I know I'm there, but I also know I'm like not.
Yeah, I mean, this is how it goes when I get to be Jacqueline's +1 at one of these fancy events where she's hobnobbing. And I'm just kind of on the outer circle, like I'm that guy at the party that has to try to time the laugh with everyone else so it feels like I'm in the conversation. But with this, I guess my question before I get to like the order and how I feel about it is, has it gotten easier or harder to predict what's going to win at the Oscars based on other award shows? Like in the last decade, because isn't there always like some award show that is like the barometer, like whether it's Critics' Choice or SAG Awards or something like that? Or has it gotten tougher to nail down what is going to take the top honors at the Oscars?
This year is particularly tough because we did not have a Golden Globes. We did not have that televised hit that happened in January that kind of laid out who the frontrunners are.
Two.
With
the CCAs, you also have the CCAs to like
Critics'
echo
Choice
it.
Awards
Yeah.
had tried to kind of usurp the Golden Globes date, but because of Omicron, they had to delay. So it's kind of the wilderness, but that's exciting to me. I think that the SAG Awards could clarify things somewhat, although there is a notable non-overlap between the nominees for SAG and the nominees for the Oscars this year. I think really kind of exciting, provocative non-overlap. A lot of people nominated for Oscars that were not in SAG and vice versa. So yeah. I don't know. I hope that it's going to be really suspenseful until the end.
I think it actually will. The only thing I will add is, Mark, you skipped the easy questions and literally went to like the most difficult question that is in our industry right now. It's like me coming in first before there's even a ball played. It's like, who do you think's going to win the Super Bowl? Easy, bro. Like, this is...
Sometimes it is easy. Sometimes it's so boring.
Yeah,
and,
true.
You know, maybe in 2.5 weeks we'll think that. But right now it feels excitingly wide open.
You look at this list that we ran down, and so there's a few movies that I thought could have been on there. Maybe instead of a Nightmare Alley or Don't Look Up, like I would have tossed. I'm a big animal fan. I'm not talking about Godzilla or Kong. Pig. I would have put Pig up there. It's 97%, I think, certified fresh. But other than that, when I take a look at this list, Kyle, I see the only things that really feel like. It feels like the Power of the Dog is going to win, and then everything else is just looking for votes. Is that how you see it, or do you think it's a little tighter?
I think it's a little tighter. I think the Power of the Dog is almost certainly going to win Best Director.
Yes.
And we have seen in recent years that the Academy is totally fine with splitting director and picture. They didn't used to be. That used to be a really rare thing. Mm-hmm. But these days, they kind of like to spread the wealth. And I think if Jane Campion is really locked in for director, they could go with something that is a little bit more crowd-pleasing for picture, which is usually what they respond to. Yep. You know, I don't think that's a done deal. I think that when you look at what got nominated, Power of the Dog got literally every nomination it had hoped to get, which the other films can't say. Mm-hmm. So you would think, okay, well, it has the strongest profile going in, but I really do think anything could happen.
I agree. I do think anything could happen. I will also say, although Power of the Dog is a Netflix production, and has Americans and other folks in it, and it's not necessarily what you consider like the Asian and Southeast Asian and the other parts of the Academy that's widened, but I do think it does have a very international feel with Benedict and Jane, and so I do think international audiences will migrate to it, but those international audiences are also the reason why Penelope, I think, got in for Best Picture. I think there's a familiarity in the actors branch with some of these, I would say, more global names. It's going to be interesting to see which ones folks resonate to. I'm more interested in Coda. Coda is becoming quietly my one that I'm like looking at, and I'm like, Apple's doing a lot of things that I'm like, they really feel they got this here. They paid for this thing and they felt really confident about it. And they're doing like a lot of very smart moves, I think, to make it viable for Best Picture. That's just my opinion. What do you think about it?
Well, I think it's very viable in supporting actor. I think Troy Kotsur is the sort of heart of that movie as the father in Coda. I think, there's essentially 3 knockout endings in Coda, and he is the most important person to all 3.
Yeah.
And I think that category is very fluid at the moment. Cody Smith-McPhee from Power of the Dog won a lot of critics prizes, but honestly, the Academy doesn't really go for like young actors. They love young actresses. They love themselves an ingenue. But like a young actor, they're like, you've got time. Let's get some like more wrinkles on that face.
Let's make sure you're legit. Let's make sure you're legit. Yeah.
And I do think Troy is not only so wonderful in that movie, but has a kind of more exciting story if he wins. So to me, that's where Apple's efforts almost certainly could find payoff. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see if they can push it all the way to picture.
This is the reason why. I want to justify my logic, because we're all going to have to Monday morning quarterback whatever we write down the Sunday before or the Friday before this all goes down. But I think about what is a lot of folks' second vote, because I do think it's going to be interesting to see. I could see a ton of people vote for Power of the Dog. I could see a ton of people vote for West Side Story and a ton of people vote for Belfast. But I still think a lot of those folks' second movie is Coda.
Right, and the way the voting works out is where you could have a lot of second places, right? You can have a lot of second places that kind of push you into first, because the first place vote is so split that Coda could sneak in that way.
That's kind of what I'm betting. But also I will say Power of the Dog equally has the same argument for itself. So anyway, that's just where I go. And those are the two that are actually at the top of our rankings. I think that Licorice Pizza is a bit high in my estimation.
Yes.
Like, just in general, I don't dislike that movie. I have no like ill will towards it. I just feel like it's a little bit high compared to others. I also think maybe King Richard is too. I like that film. Don't know if it really hits everything that it's trying to throw up. Like, I don't know if it lands aces every serve.
Serve up? Yeah. I like where you're going with that. I really liked King Richard a lot. I mean, you know, I'm a big sports fan. Like, I've been following the Williams sisters their entire career, and so it was kind of cool to get that backstory. And the performances were amazing. The movie that I look at here that I would be rooting for like an upset victory would be Belfast. Just because it is so, I mean, you look at something like West Side Story and it's such an amazing production that Steven Spielberg was able to pull off with a lot of magic in it. But I just look at the story of Belfast, and particularly given the world events going on right now, the end, oh my God, for those who stayed, for those who got out, the way it says that, it just really, I
and
watched
by
it
the
again
way,
this week.
if you don't think Focus Features is thinking about a way to co-opt this tastefully, I don't think you know Oscar campaigning, because that's the first thing.
That's what they do. In the second phase of an Oscar campaign, they have to make the argument, this is why this is the movie for right now. And current events do somewhat contextualize Belfast in a different way.
I do have to just put it this way. Kyle, looking over this list, how it has it ranked, do you think Rotten Tomatoes is wrong ranking these films the way that they do?
I think it's a pretty right-on list. Here's the thing. I don't think every great movie needs to be perfect. I have quibbles with some of these movies. To be honest with you, the funny thing is that I would probably recommend Coda to the most people, but I think personally that Coda is a little high. I love Troy Kotsur in it, and I think it really brings it home. But I think we're all forgetting how kind of like pat and beamed in from Planet Cartoon the music teacher scenes are. And that's a big subplot of that movie. You know, you forget it because the final scenes are so human, but I was kind of like white knuckling it through those scenes. Like, I don't know about that.
No comment as someone that spent time with the cast, but you know, no comment.
No comment is a comment.
Especially around award season. You got to read into all these no comments.
Yeah. So you're saying you feel like it's right. We're right-ish, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good summation of just about how I would order it. I'd have Coda a little bit lower. No knock. To be honest with you, I don't hate any of these movies. Sometimes you get a Best Picture field where there's one or two and you're like, oh no, what are they doing there? But even the ones I like a little less, I kind of think, well, for the most part, think that they deserve a placement in that, and that they are kind of like an accurate depiction of what this year in film was like.
And we should talk about it right before we sort of break down some of the more memorable moments of the two. I think this is the best year possible for the Academy to be going back to 10, because I think the worst result of that decision, which I do think is right for the Academy and right for honoring the best motion picture, and now considering that there are literally 3 times as many films premiering a year as there were 10 years ago with the addition of streaming. So I really do think that having 10 is great. And it would really have been awful if the 10th film this year was something completely out of left field. There's a lot of folks that have problems with Don't Look Up, but it is not universally hated. You know what I'm saying? Despised, or maybe.
I like the swing.
Outside of Twitter, maybe.
Twitter has its own feelings about a lot of things. But I feel like Don't Look Up, I appreciate the effort and I appreciate what it was trying to do. That's the movie that sticks out to me like a sore thumb on this list, just because of the people involved, of the director, of the incredible cast. That one feels like it's almost like we have to put this one in because we have 10 slots. And I don't think it has a chance of winning, and it just doesn't really seem to stack up with I think that and Nightmare Alley are properly placed. I'll put it that way, because I'm like Kyle. I don't necessarily hate any movies on this list, but I think Nightmare Alley and Don't Look Up belong way down there, bringing up the rear.
I'll play devil's advocate for Don't Look Up, which is this is a film that we will continue to reference in the next few years.
Sure. Very fair.
I don't hate Don't Look Up. I'm like, I just said, like, I don't hate Don't Look Up. I think Don't Look Up is messy. In fact, I remember I had heard a report about like how it was being filmed and it was edited. Like all Adam McKay movies come together in the edit. I think every time that man is nominated for an Oscar, his editor should be nominated as well, because all of his movies are made in the edit. They just take tons and tons and tons of takes, keep going. It was a bit messy. It's a bit messy. It was a bit messy. It was a bit rushed. Probably could have been incubated probably another 6 months and maybe gotten something like The Big Short, but that's what I got on it.
Yeah, I Don't Look Up to me, it doesn't stack up with the rest of these movies. I thoroughly enjoyed watching it, and again, I love what it's trying to do. I don't think it pulled that off magnificently, because I was really rooting for it too, and I'm still excited about what Adam McKay does with this project about the Capitol on January 6th. I'm excited to see what he can do with that material, but I mean, I just don't see it as like a Best Picture contender, because when I see a Best Picture nominee, I want to think it has at least a shot of winning. And when I look at the top 8 of this list, I really feel like Belfast could be an upset. I do. I feel like I think Dune is just there, maybe because they're like, hey, sorry we didn't vote for you, Danny, even though you really deserved it. Let's just put you in the Best Picture nominees instead. But I feel like Dune
snubbed was actually my shock. Everybody calls Spielberg. Everybody said it was like he, or maybe even Kenneth Branagh, like I did. But I was shocked to see Denny not on there. What about you, Kyle?
I mean, I thought Spielberg might, because West Side Story seemed to be fading, but I didn't think Branagh would get snubbed. You know, Belfast is his own story. It's kind of hard to separate him from it if you like the movie, and they clearly do. I mean, honestly, I don't think Belfast winning Best Picture would be an upset. Right now, I'd be almost kind of tempted to say that's where it's going to go. I think that if it comes down to a battle of the sort of, you know, smaller sized crowd pleasers, which would be Coda and Belfast, that Belfast has a little bit of an edge with the Academy because it's considered more artful. I think it's important to note that, there are certain movies that Twitter doesn't like. In fact, again, listen, I'm not out there trying to like be standing Don't Look Up. That's not my vibe. But I do think the discrepancy between its critic score and its audience score has a little bit to do with everybody, with so many of the critics on Twitter kind of like seeing what the vibe was and kind of all kind of landing in the same place. Yeah,
it's 56% rotten on the Tomatometer, then 78% with the audience score. So that's like a mark. It's not quite a man on fire situation, but that's like that's a market improvement.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the best moments from the year, because, you know, like any countdown list, we have to make sure we hit multiple categories. I have favorite moments from a lot of these films, but I think this is so funny. I really have to say Everlasting Love with Jamie and Katrina was like a thing for me. It really was. It really was. I saw that very late at night at Telluride. I was kind of sleepy, but give me a good nostalgia song. That brings me back to like Dirty Dancing type stuff. Like, I think I've watched Dirty Dancing too many times not to love everything that scene was doing. Kyle, what about you?
I loved all the Bradley Cooper stuff in Licorice Pizza. And here's the funny thing. If there was one movie I would boot from this Best Picture lineup, it would probably be Nightmare Alley, which I don't think is an entirely successful movie. I think it's way too lush and expensive looking for a movie that's supposed to be seedy. You know, like if your circus looks like it cost $50 million to stage, but it's supposed to be this, den of iniquity, then I'm not really buying it. It's a little too over-designed. That said, that ending scene is fantastic. And that's one of the scenes that has definitely stuck with me amongst this Best Picture lineup.
Oh, man. That scene. I was just thinking back. I saw that for the first time at New York Film Festival when it premiered. And it's a pretty much exact, almost beat for beat from the original version. But seeing Bradley Cooper do it Because Bradley Cooper is so Hollywood. You know what I mean?
I don't think it was at the New York Film Festival, right?
Wasn't it?
There was a New York
it
premiere.
wasn't at the New York Film Festival. It was the screening was at the Tully Hall.
Right, yeah.
Apologies. I'm like, honestly, the only time I'm at the Tully Hall in New York is for New York Film
it's for
Festival.
that.
I just happened to be there when they were doing it. But yeah, it was a New York Film Festival. It was just at the Tully Hall. But
You
anyway,
see, folks, they're literally getting their film festivals confused. That's,
Shut up.
That's
Yeah.
how many they attend.
shut
Quality
up. And
problems.
honestly, that is not hard to do. Like, come on. I literally like, when did I see you last? You have to just go back to the last event. But he was so glossy. Like Bradley Cooper is like got very movie star appeal, and that's what he plays when he's playing the mentalist in those scenes. And so to then see somebody like that maybe looked like Bradley Cooper be that down on it, I thought was very interesting. You know, I love to see people fall from grace. We've already talked about some of these as far as who and when and such, but so snubs and surprises from that morning, because I still to this day will mark that down as one of the strangest Oscar mornings I can recall.
You know, to be honest with you, I thought Tragedy of Macbeth would do better. It has a pretty unimpeachable Oscar pedigree, directed by Joel Coen. Like Denzel Washington and Frances McDormand are the stars, and it's based on Shakespeare. Incredible looking. Like, you know, I thought that was the stuff, and I thought that movie was great. It's just that when the dust settled and I looked around, nobody was really there with me. I don't know. It didn't really connect. Certainly Denzel is in, and a lot of the tech stuff, but I thought that would be kind of a no-brainer.
I wasn't surprised, but I was really sort of disappointed that nothing came outside of Independent Spirit for Red Rocket. I'm not surprised by it, but I still to this day, I am much more about what did this person do given their experience, what they were asked to do. And like Denzel doing Shakespeare, he started doing Othello 45 years ago. As impressive as that is, this has been part of who this man is for as long as he's been an actor. But to think of the guy from Scary Movie 4 giving one of the most incredibly disarming and charismatic performances of a literal sociopathic borderline like narcissist, it's just so, I don't know, man. I still look at that movie as just like this complete act of audience subversion. I know you are not as much of a fan.
No, I like Red Rocket.
Oh, you did? Oh,
Yeah.
I thought you didn't like it as much. A lot of people had problems with the subject matter. I thought it's hard to root for the guy, but that's the brilliant part. The movie makes you root for him.
I don't have to root for anybody. I just have to find them interesting. That's my rule of thumb when it comes to unlikable protagonists.
Ooh, that's good. Everybody listening, pin that. That's a good quote to watch movies going forward. But Jacqueline, I think it's a tough line to draw as far as like, well, Denzel's been doing this for so long. I always hated that Karl Malone won the MVP in a season when Michael Jordan was playing basketball, just because it's like we're just tired of. It's like, of course, Michael's great. It's like he's the best player. He should get the MVP. So. I feel like Denzel earned it. When I woke up that morning, by the way, Jacqueline's the first person I think of when I wake up on Oscar nominations morning, because I don't text you. I send you a note around 2 p.m. and I'm just like, hey, I'm here if you want to talk. That's it. And then I go on my merry way. Nicolas Cage, obviously, I was hoping he'd get nominated for Pig because that was just such a great performance. I also thought Ruth Negga was going to be like a shoo-in for Passing because she's great in it. And that was the one that left me, even more so than Nicolas Cage, because it was a stacked field in Best Actor. I mean, look, there's a lot of talent out there, but Ruth Negga was the one that I was just I had to read the nominations again because I thought I just missed it.
Yeah, that's brutal for me. That was my favorite performance of last year. I wrote about it a lot in the Times. I felt a little guilty because I also said they should nominate Jessie Buckley. That's one I didn't think would ever happen.
Yeah.
Jessie Buckley for The Lost Daughter. I started to think Ruth Negga might be safe. But I think that film deserved more, and maybe there was only so much room for, you know, all the movies that Netflix was pushing. Not that they didn't push it, but they also had another movie like Passing that was the directorial debut of an actress, very female-fronted, you know, with actress and supporting actress contenders. And I think ultimately The Lost Daughter ended up getting the lion's share of buzz there.
It did. And what's really interesting with it, too, the Maggie Gyllenhaal is it's so interesting. It's very homogenous. It's approachable in some ways with
Maggie Gyllenhaal is homogenous?
No.
Or the movie?
The movie's makeup is somewhat homogenous as far as the makeup of the folks that
You
are
want
there.
to just say white people?
I'm not going to say it.
You could say it.
It's white people in Greece and, or Italy and whatever.
The other performance I'll just throw out there real quick is Jude Hill is deserving of something in Belfast. That kid was just transcendental. I don't like children, as you know, Jacqueline. And I just fell in love as soon as he's on screen. He's great.
What did you think about him, Kyle?
I think that when it came to the Belfast nominations, there was probably a lack of clarity about what category a lot of those people were supposed to be in. The two evidently supporting performances both got nominated for supporting. And then everybody else probably got a whole bunch of votes in different categories that kind of wrecked their chances.
Yeah, I actually believe that is the truth as well. And the confusion, by the way, on the clarification on who is competing what, I think owes to the international contingency as well, because the films are not marketed the same way out there as far as like getting access to it. There's not as much FYC. And so I just don't know how connected they are to, I liked the Belfast movie. She's competing for supporting actress.
Well, I do like the spiciness of pushing back against the, sometimes very craven, cynical categories that people get pushed in. Sometimes a very evidently lead performance is pushed in supporting for all sorts of political reasons, and sometimes vice versa. And I do like it when, the Academy's like, no, we're just going to vote for them where we want to vote for them. And that's just how it's going to be. I mean, sometimes that's a little bit nuts. And you get a situation like with Judas and the Black Messiah, where both of those men were nominated in supporting, because I don't think there was clarity about who was supposed to go where. But sometimes they right a wrong, which is Kate Winslet for The Reader. She was being positioned as supporting because she had a lead role in her then husband's movie Revolutionary Road, and the Academy said, "No, you're the lead. That's where we're voting for you," and she ended up winning.
And that's where she ended up winning, yeah, which I thought was so funny as well. Let's go ahead really quickly here because Kyle, I know you have to get out of here fairly soon, but the fans are going to be a bigger part of this award ceremony for a bunch of reasons. They started it nominations morning and previewed their hand by having, regular folks and the TikTokers of the world coming in and announcing the nominations. And they then announced Oscar fan favorite, which is a sort of backdoor to what they'd previously done, the popular vote Oscar. And it's a thing. I don't know.
It is technically a thing. I can't argue with that.
It's a way to crown a movie that everybody loves, but this is like how they avoid a Dark Knight controversy in the future, because the Dark Knight was like worthy of being nominated, right? But even if you love a comic book movie that may not be worthy of being in the top 10, you still want to give it some recognition. To me, it just feels like the Oscars just are tired of getting yelled at, and so they're like, look, we'll give Spider-Man something. Congratulations, you had 3 Spider people show up. Here's your fan favorite Burger King crown.
Well, I think that's how they hoped it would go. I think they thought, of course, everybody's obviously going to vote for Spider-Man. It's the biggest film of the year. But if you peruse that hashtag, it is Cinderella, the Amazon musical. It is Army of the Dead, the Zack Snyder fan base going hard for. There's Minamata, a Johnny Depp movie that nobody saw, but that his, remaining contingent of fans are voting for. These are some of the most quickly forgotten films of the year, not Spider-Man. And I think that this has the potential to hilariously blow up in their faces.
It does, but I have a feeling it won't. Like, I don't know this for sure because we haven't, but like the next Twitter Spaces or whatever, they're going to let us know. And their site has already said that, like, that's not it, because they have 2 things. They have cheer moment.
Yeah.
And they have fan favorite. And a lot of these folks that are programming this stuff or trying to be whatever aren't voting correctly. So they're like giving a cheer moment on fan favorite and vice versa. Like, they're not doing what they need to do to say, I'm voting for the right way. And so it's actually, the numbers are not Cinderella. I'm pretty sure it's Spider-Man's the number 1 now.
Well,
I think Spider-Man's
perusing the
sad.
hashtag, it ain't, but we'll see if they're a little too embarrassed by those results and they throw out some hanging Chad ballots.
Hey, look at you, just putting all kinds of implications to that. I am not. I think the folks at Price Cooper House.
Price Waterhouse Coopers?
Yeah, Price
Are
Waterhouse.
they handling that, or is somebody else?
I
They're
hope
not giving
they
out an
are.
actual Oscar, so
Are
You know
they?
how I
Oh,
feel
wait.
about this, Jacqueline. I feel it. I feel it was complete. I think the whole La La Land Moonlight thing was completely on purpose. I think it was to drive up ratings for the next year, and I will die on that hill.
Well, you can die on that hill, but that
Spicy,
dude lost
spicy.
his job, so
Very
I don't.
spicy.
Right now, I think we've kind of said it, but just last sort of thoughts. Kyle, what do you think is going to win?
Picture?
Yep.
Gosh. I'm just going to go with the simple one, which is Belfast. I do kind of think that there will be a split this year. But I'll be really curious to see what ends up winning the Producers Guild Award.
Yes.
Not that they always match, and sometimes recently they have provocatively mismatched. But yeah, I do think that Campion is such a lock that it almost makes Power of the Dog less of a lock for picture.
Yeah. And see, I think Brenna might be a lock on screenplay. But
Well, usually to win picture, you got to win screenplay. It's
Yeah.
very rare that you don't. And if you don't, sometimes that happens. And it happens because of some really spicy screenplays or a movie that doesn't feel as motivated by its screenplay.
yeah. And I honestly think that Licorice Pizza is not the type of film that's going to topple Belfast's stuff.
In screenplay, no.
Yeah. I really don't. But a lot of people are saying, PTAs do. But I'm just like, I just don't feel that.
Yeah, I don't know if the Academy does either. I thought the movie was going to do a little bit better. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not an unsubstantial thing that he made it into the director race too.
Yeah.
To get picture and director. Very few films did, obviously, but
Yeah.
but virtually nothing else. The screenplay, sure, but where were some of the actors? Where was some of the other stuff? I don't know that they feel this is the movie.
Absolutely. Mark, what about you? What do you think is going to win?
I was prepared to just say the Power of the Dog, but now Kyle's really swaying me towards my heart. Kyle is trying to show me the way home here to Belfast, and you just
Oh,
think
you
of
sound like an Oscar campaign ad now.
Yeah.
Because I believe the narrative they've been going with in their phase 2 Oscar campaigning is vote with your heart. A very not so subtle slam against the more maybe cerebral Power of the Dog.
right.
Very true.
Yeah.
And by the way, that is the philosophy of Donna Langley. One of the first things she said to me when I interviewed her once was she knew that
Donna
Green
Langley
Book
from
was gonna-
Universal.
yeah, Universal chairman. She's still chairman. Universal chairman Donna Langley said the reason why Green Book won is because people loved it and they didn't care what anybody thought. And Oscar
that
voters
simple.
Oscar voters vote for what they love.
Yeah, it is that simple. And, I love Power of the Dog, but I have talked to people who did not, who were not heart engaged by it.
Yes.
So
I mean, it's definitely a film that moves you, but it's not necessarily something that tugs at your heartstrings.
I don't think it is definitely a film that moves you.
Oh,
I've talked to
mean-
people who were not moved. I love it. And I think it got even better the second time I watched it. But it is a more cerebral, intellectual movie. And sometimes, most of the time, Oscar voters do vote with their heart.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
heard I felt some emotional tinges watching it. I have heard from people that they just thought it was boring. They thought it was slow. But I mean, also, you also hear from people that Belfast, it's in black and white, so they can't watch it. I'm going Belfast because
Going
Kyle's
Belfast?
making me. You literally witnessed Kyle force me into a decision, and I'm thrilled that it's the one that I wanted to say anyway. But I wasn't brave enough. I wasn't
We'll
brave
see.
enough to start.
We'll see.
Well-
I'll be curious what happens with the Screen Actors Guild Outstanding Cast Award. But it is important to note that like Screen Actors Guild and it's SAG-AFTRA, and AFTRA has a whole lot of people that are kind of, it has radio journalists, weathermen, TikTokers. So what they end up going for might not be completely reflective of the somewhat more refined taste of the Academy.
Kyle, the reason why you're here on top of talking Oscars, though, is to tell us about this incredible thing that you created that I'm not going to say. It was so funny. I think I mentioned it to you. He's like, that should be a book. And you're like, actually, was that the first? I did say that to you, I think. And you had already started talking about making it a book.
Yeah, so this book about the making of Mad Max Fury Road that I just wrote is somewhat inspired and spun out of a much smaller oral history that I did for the New York Times in May 2020. And, yeah, I mean, it was a really successful article in the Times, and you said, Jacqueline, and other colleagues of mine like Manola Dargis said this could be a book. And when people say that to you, or at least to me, I'm like, okay, how does that happen though? I'd never written a book before. It seemed like a daunting endeavor, given that I have an incredibly full-time job as it is. But I'd kind of backed my way into it. There were incredible stories that just, simply didn't fit into that Times piece. And I knew that there would be more the more people I talked to. There's an incredibly long credit scroll at the end of that movie, and every single one of those people have fascinating stories because it just was a shoot like none other. It's one of the craziest, longest, wildest, most difficult shoots in Hollywood history, and it produced a masterpiece. Yep. So I knew that there was a lot of meat on that bone, and fortunately, once I got together a book proposal, there was a lot of publishing interest in it, and here we are today.
I love it.
It's an absolute must read, even if you're not high on Mad Max Fury Road necessarily. I am, but even if you're not, Blood, Sweat, and Chrome, the wild and true story of Mad Max Fury Road. So I heard about this book, and I didn't connect the dots that you were our guest on the show, and then also this book, because I was doing morning radio promoting my shows at the Comedy Store, and we were talking movies and about this book that had come out that was talking about Charlize Theron and Tom Hardy and their I guess fishing on set. Their somewhat of relationship fractured early. And I was like, oh, yeah, I mean, I remember hearing about that, but now I want to check out this book. You're the guy that wrote it.
I'm the guy who wrote it.
How can you just contextualize? Was it just pure hatred? Was it venomous? Was it just, hey, I just want to be in my own character space? What was the source of the friction?
I really do think it's a clash in approaches. Charlize is an extremely by the book actress. She shows up right on time. She does exactly what you need her to do, and she does it, astonishingly well. She can knock out something like, that take where Furiosa falls to her knees in the desert and screams on the first take. If you ask her to do just about anything, she'll do it. Tom Hardy is not like that. Tom Hardy is somebody who kind of fails toward the truth. He will say, he experiments relentlessly and is willing to humiliate himself in takes in order to get to something that feels wild but right. So that can take a while, and so can he. Honestly, he's not known for his punctuality, and I think for somebody like Charlize, who's very professional, who's out there in the desert, who's a little bit anxious about how this movie is going to turn out, and also has just adopted her first child and probably wants to go out there, do a great job, and go home. It was not the sort of working relationship that she would have preferred. A lot of people did not get along. A lot of people who worked on that movie did not know whether they were making, the biggest bomb of their lives or what turned out to be, probably one of the most lasting credits of all of these people's resumes. It's a scary thing making a movie, especially if you're like, when you see these people not getting along, or you think to yourself, does George Miller really know what he's doing? He hasn't made a live action movie in ages. His last two films were Happy Feet and Happy Feet 2. Does he really know how to make like an action movie that our superhero weaned audience is going to respond to? People were terrified.
I was going to say too, and I get it, because the thing that the book is a testament to is it is a minor miracle to make a bad movie. Like, right. Even if you bring in every stakeholder, craftsmanship, you have an incredible vision, a bulletproof script, a studio willing to do everything, everyone can come together and really have an earnest desire to make an incredible film and give you the worst movie you've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like, that happens so often than not. And then there's movies like this where everyone hated each other. There are people calling their agents daily, like, get me out of here. Uh-huh. Nobody enjoyed it. It was traumatic and stressful, and they hated their existence. And it goes on to win 6 Oscars or whatever it did.
To be fair, many people who worked on it did enjoy it and consider it the most creatively gratifying experience of their lives. But there is an almost equal amount of people who can't watch the movie because it just the feelings of anxiety and trauma in some cases are still really fresh. It's a tricky thing. But yeah, I mean, Mark was saying earlier that you don't have to be the biggest Mad Max fan to read this book. And I think that's true. I think that if you're, I mean, obviously it's going to help if you want to know about how they made this movie, because it is the sort of movie you watch and you're like, how the hell did they make it? But I think if you're interested in how they make any movie, it's kind of a great story. For George Miller to have had this vision that he was basically carrying around for 2 decades, and to have so many people say, you can't do this, we'll shut it down, this won't work. And for all this, kind of act of God, all these act of God obstacles to be thrown in his path, it's astonishing to me that he still could keep the faith and keep his torch burning and not just say, you know what? Yeah, we probably shouldn't do this. I mean, it got shut down countless times, and he still had this faith in his vision. It was playing on a loop in his head. He knew how good it was, but he couldn't always make other people see it until that movie came out.
Yeah, Jacqueline, I feel like if you're one of those people that believes in signs and like the universe is trying to tell you something, everyone would have given up on this movie multiple times. This is the universe telling you, hey, don't make this movie, and just the belief that, no, we can do something great, and everybody willing to buy into a 78-year-old man on Tatooine making a movie. It's just, I mean, again, it's astounding to watch that movie. If I told you everybody was so copacetic and it was such a great vibe on set, you would still be astonished that movie came out.
If there was a podcast that I spent 20 years trying to get made and everybody was like, no, I would have abandoned ship on that ages ago, let alone this gigantic production that, capsized incredibly multiple times. It's a really crazy thing. And I think it makes you mull what kind of temperament directors have and these sorts of storytellers. And what do they have to have? What kinds of spines of steel do they have to get these things over the finish line?
Yeah, it's you. I always tell people when you're making a movie, it's essentially like you are building a tiny city for 3 months that has to have an ecosystem, and it's a dictatorship.
And they built this city in the desert, with nothing around. So they were living in that world, and they took great pains to make that world feel as real as possible. The stuntmen were living as war boys. Everybody was living it. And when you're out there and you're on those vehicles that are built for real, that are moving for real, and the war boys are throwing spears at you for real, like, it feels real. You don't have to do a lot of acting, but what you can't do is do a lot of decompressing, a lot of pulling yourself away from that world, because you're in it whether you like it or not.
Yeah, I get it. Jacqueline, this is why this book is so important to me, is that eventually you got to step back a little bit, because we love talking movies on this show, and it's fun. It's fun to dog bad movies and to praise movies that we think were unfairly maligned. But at the end of the day, it's hard to make a movie. Yeah. I don't want any part of it. So I applaud. I'm sorry, Don't Look Up. I apologize, Licorice Pizza. I hope you win all of the awards. You're great. Job well done.
Love it.
This is not what I wanted out of this. This was not my intention, I promise.
Let me say this, Kyle, again, Blood, Sweat, and Chrome, The Wild and True Story of Mad Max Fury Road is available wherever fine books are sold, online and in person. Thank you, sir, for being here. Where can folks find you, and anything I didn't mention already?
I work for the New York Times. You can find my column, The Projectionist, in the Times online every Wednesday and in print every Thursday. I'm also on Twitter at Kyle Buchanan.
Awesome. Well, I will see you in a Q&A or reception soon, sir.
Or in a cool suit at the SAG Awards.
I guess, yeah. Well, I don't know. Are you doing produce? Well, see, this is why we got to go, because there's another event before then.
I want pics. I want pics of the suit.
Oh, yeah, definite pics.
Definite pics. All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
It was so great to chat with Kyle. Please, guys, also follow him on Instagram. I'm not kidding about his suit game.
I've done and done. I'm very excited to see this. We're not competing, but I like to know who else is out there and what they're wearing. So I make notes. I take care of how I appear in public occasionally.
The glow up is real, Mark. I see how you're doing. Mark is approaching his 40s. Like, this is where to get flirty. On that note, though.
I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
I don't want to give him any chance to comment on the fact that I just said that he's trying to do 40 and flirty. All right, guys, we still are taking submissions. I have to keep begging you. We want to do the Hook episode. We want to talk about Rufio. We want to talk about Glenn Close having a beard. You have to send us this. Listen, our overlords will not let us do it without you. Like,
send
you have to
in
do it.
your stuff. Audio, video, send in a clip of why you feel the way you do about Hook to RTisWrong at RottenTomatoes.com. Now you got me whispering. Dustin Hoffman is Captain Hook. Bob Hoskins as whoever, was it Smee? I mean,
Glenn Close is in that movie. Glenn Close is in that movie. Did you know that, Mr. Schmodown?
No, but she used to be married to my brother's guitar player, teacher, years and years and years ago. So how about that? Did you know that, Jacqueline? See?
Oh my God. All right, that's it for us this week. We'll see y'all next time on Rotten Tomatoes is Wrong.